Okay, good morning. So we're going to finish off Miss Hashem Siman Shin Tesvav, the last two seifim of the halachas of Oyhel that we've been wading through, and then Miss Hashem tomorrow we'll do Shin Tezayim. We'll start that, which is the halachas of Tzeda and things like that. So let's just finish off Oyhel. We're up to Shin Tezvav Seif Yud Beis. Hanoite Pereiches v'chiyotze bo. If a person hangs a pereiches, a curtain, and the like, you got to be careful that you don't make an oyhel whilst doing that. Lefichach, and therefore, imi pereiches kadoila, if it's a very large curtain, toilin oisa shnaim, hang it up with two people. Avol echad asa, but if you do it with one person, it's not allowed. Because we'll see, it's inevitable. It's very likely you're going to sort of drape the part of the oyhel over and sort of create some sort of oyhel, and therefore that can be avoided with two people. If, however, we're dealing with some sort of canopy which has got a gag, then even if you've got 10 people, you can't stretch it out. Because at some point in the construction you're going to make an oyel arai, and that is also midrabanan. So that is not allowed. Okay, let's see the Mishnah Berurah. Hanoite pereiches, sif shin tezvav sif yud beis. Hanoite pereiches, kol zehu lashon Rambam. All of this is as often is the case. The Beis Yosef is quoting the Rambam and sometimes literally verbatim. Usvirlei. And even though there are threads in it from which you're hanging it, because otherwise you've got to, you can't intentionally hang it up. Like we said previously in Sif Yud, still, even if you've got the chutin already in place, you've got a problem. You've got to be careful. You've got to be careful. You shouldn't make an oyel as you're hanging up this pereiches. It says in Mishnah Berurah. What does that mean? When you're busy hanging up this pereiches, sometimes a bit of the curtain sort of drapes down and folds over from the width or part of the curtain. And if the bit folding over is a tefach, then you've got a problem with oyhel. He says over here, interesting, in number 90, he says, V'toma Chazon Ish. The Chazon Ish is very bemused by this. Since he's holding the thing in his hand, you're not really making an oyhel. This is where an oyhel, where without mechitzas, because you're just draping it down and there's no problem mechitzas coming down, the mechitzas anyway, which are not made to sort of protect from the shade, to give you shade, even then is not also. So the Chazon Ish is a bit perplexed by this particular concern. But either way, the Mechaber says you've got to be very careful when you put up this pereiches that it shouldn't drape down more than a tefach and thereby construct an oyhel. Okay, but and therefore, if you are hanging up some sort of pereiches, do it with two people, not with one person, to avoid this problem. It says in Mishnah Berurah Memhei, because if you've got two people hanging up the pereiches, they can do it in a way that it's not going to fold over and form this oyhel. If you've only got one person doing it, it'll be very hard. And therefore, better to avoid putting up a pereiches on Shabbos. Kilo. But then if we've got this sort of canopy, it's sort of hanging over some sort of pole or something like that. Like we spoke about previously. There's something in place from before Shabbos. Like the Rambam said previously, which we mentioned before, that there's got to be some sort of chut from before Shabbos. The problem would be if you've got a gag where you've got a width of a tefach. If the gag is very wide, because if you haven't got a thickness of a tefach, because if it's a very thin pole and you're just like making a wigwam type thing, that would actually be allowed. The whole problem is oil when you've got a gag of a tefach. That's always the definition. She'i efsha, where is that going on? Kila sheyesh gag ein moischenos afila sara she'i efsha shletig ba'ma'at ben alaris v'teos oil aray. Because it's inevitable, you're going to lift it up a little bit, and you've created an oil. You've got a gag at the top, a tefach at the top, and then you've got sides, and you've got a problem of an oil. Says the Mishnah Berurah Mem Zayin she'i efsha ratzulema delay name heichasha kila hirechava. Don't say that when the kila is very wide shekol echod yikshe rak zovis hakila leksolim v'nisha emtza kila munach ala karka she'ein sham oil aleha kamash malon she'ein shame oil aleha. Yeah, kamash malon, that we say that would be a concern of oil, and therefore to avoid it. Okay, Peseda Yud Gimel. Beget sheshoit chinal pichovis. So you've got some sort of material which you're spreading over the top of a barrel. Lechasos, to cover the barrel. Lo yishtachena al pnei kulei mishum oil. You're making an oil there because you've got mechitzas, the sides of the barrel, and you've got you're covering it. You're covering the top. So if you cover it fully, you've made an oil. So just leave a bit of it open, and therefore it's not really fashioning an oil. V'hani mili kashakuba pirsh kli, that when this barrel, this kli, chasera tefach, when there's going to be a gap of a tefach underneath the material which you're covering it with, because then it makes an oil. Avlim eina chasera tefach, but if there's no gap, then that's okay. Muta to ein kan oil. Then there's no problem of making an oil because it's there's no tefach. Again, the oil is only going to be a problem when you've got a mokum of a tefach underneath it.
If the barrel is open.
Yeah, the barrel is open. The barrel is open. If there's no barrel, if it's closed, there's no problem. You're just putting a tablecloth on the table, sort of thing. That's no problem. We're talking about an open barrel, and there's at least a tefach of airspace underneath. It's not full of beans all the way to the top or something like that. And then you've got a tefach, and you're putting this oil on, this cover on top of it.
The limit how much has to be open, the barrel?
So that he says, so he's going to say in the notes, it's unclear that. When he talks about Rachov, it's not clear. Yeah. Okay, let's see. It says the Mishnah Berurah Memches. Al pi achavis mishum oil. V'af agav the shari lahachzak kadeira agabe kira. Now you've got a similar parallel situation where you put back a pot on top of a kira. So it's a similar sort of situation because you've got a sides, and then you've got an opening, and then you're putting something on top of it. So you've got a pot on top. It's like putting the cover on top of the barrel, which is open. So it's similar. So it says Mishnah Berurah Memches, Afal gav d'shari lachzak kadeira agabe kira. Even though you can put a pot back on the stove, mishum oil, and we're not worried about oil. Oil v'hamechitzas kvasuyas, because the mechitzas is already there. Of oil kazesh ein kavnos oil elishim memele nase. It sort of just happens. Ein asa elim yasa mechitzas gamkein would only be problematic if you make mechitzas at the same time. Chanal b'sif gimel Mishnah Berurah. Yesh loima oil v'hakuba rechava yosimidai. Since this kuba, this kli, is quite wide, and again not clear how wide. It says in the notes. Naasek oil. It's you're making an oil. And then going back to our case of the Shulchan Aruch Chavis, we're talking about a wide barrel. And he says, I think it's in 94, it's not clear how wide we're talking over here. Okay. If you've got a box or something, a wide box which has got a kisui, if it's not sort of a fixed top, like imagine like it's sort of got hinges and it just flips up, that would be okay. But if it hasn't, and you're just taking a cover, and you're placing it on top, then it'll be a problem to put the top back on Shabbos. But if it's a thinnish or a smallish teva, then it would be okay to cover it. Because you've got the mechitzas already in place. So if you're moving the whole thing, and in the new place you're going to cover it, then that's definitely a problem. Because by you placing it in this new place, it's as if you've placed the mechitza with the kisui biyachad, and you just constructed an oilare. V'lochein tzarich lizoy besudas gedolos. When you've got these large meals, shemanichim shulchanos alachovius, and you want to put out more tables, and the way to do so is to put boards on top of barrels. You should be careful that you place this empty barrel, place the opening of the barrel inside a karka. So if you've got a barrel and you've got, like I was describing to you in Mesharim, when they invite the Bochrim and you've got your Yerushalmis doing amazing achlasarchim, and suddenly another 20 guys show up and you need a few more tables. So you've got some sort of barrel, let's say, and you want to put a board on top of it. Just turn the barrel upside down so the opening is facing down to the ground, and the top of the barrel is the base of the barrel is now at the top. So to put a board on top of that, no problem. But if you've got the other way around, where you've got the opening is facing up, then you've got a problem. So you've got to do it. He says in the note 100, the first line, he says, I'm going to just explain this. The Rosh Shlomo Zalman explains, since the only way to use the chovis is to lift it off the ground now, because the bottom, the opening is facing the bottom, is on the ground. And to use it, you've got to lift up the barrel and put something inside it. That you're not going to do. Okay, carrying on the Mishnah Berurah. Oid cost of the Tishkestel. Tishkestel he puts over here is Megeiras Shulchan, some sort of drawer of a table or something. Shenishmat kula min shulchan, that fully comes out of the shulchan. Im yesh tefach ba'omek chalola osalach zira. If there is a tefach of a halal of an opening, osalach zira, you got a problem. By putting back the drawer, you're making an oil. She'es oil v'chein mita shekerin shlofbank. He says at the bottom there, safsal sheina, some sort of bench. You sleep on it. Sheyesh lo kisui ve'ena mechuberes b'tzirim. And again, it's got a cover, and it hasn't got hinges where you're just opening and closing it. Ein lahachzor la kisui. Putting the kisui back onto it is prohibited. Again, you're making an oil. You don't have to protest for those who are makil, because they've got what to rely on. And what is that? Which are the shit of the Rav and Rashba, which I'm bringing in the next Sif Cotton. So what is that? So chasera tefach. So if you've got the kuba, which is chasera tefach, says the Mishnah Berurah, i.e. the barrel is not full. Imagine you've got a barrel full of beans or something, and you've got it's not full, so you've got an opening of a tefach, of a vacuum, and then you put the top on, so then you've made the yohel. This is what he referred to just now. The Ravid and the Rashba have the opinion, putting a cover on an oil is never a problem of making an oil. Kisu kelim is ein by mishum oil. The Gemara lachazes kol hakuba v'giges b'mnei shenir k'meshamer. The Gemara says it is. Yeah, that's not because of oil. There's a problem of meshamer meshamer is meshamer. I've just gone blank. It's a type of boira. So it's nothing to do with the oil. That's why the Gemara doesn't allow it. By putting a cover on a kli, says the Ravid and the Rashba, there's no problem with oil. However, we should not be soymech on that, and really you should be machmir like the shit of the Shulchan Aruch. She does have a Rishonim, which is basically the view of many Rishonim. And therefore, for example, if you've got a big barrel of water, don't cover it fully. But those who do, and a makel, you don't have to protest. They have got who upon whom to rely, like we just said. Okay, Beseda. That's the end of Oyel, and Miss Hashem will start Seder trapping animals tomorrow.